This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Julien Coulon, Director Général of Crédit Mutuel Equity. Crédit Mutuel Innovation is the evergreen venture capital entity of Crédit Mutuel Equity. They invest 1 to 20 million euros in life science, digital, and deep tech companies from seed to growth stages. Today, the 350 companies in which they have invested generate a cumulative annual turnover of 50 billion euro and create more than 250,000 jobs. Julien, thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for receiving me.
Great. So I heard you were once an entrepreneur, but can you tell us more about your background before you started investing in early stage companies?
Well, I'm 47 years old, 2 kids. I started to work at 18 years old, so more a self-taught person. And I jumped in the internet industry in 1992. So maybe some of the people listening to this podcast were not born at that time. So I had the chance to create my first website in 1992, then jump into the internet industry and work for several American companies, some that I'm sure you know, called Akamai. And then after creating companies or launching subsidiaries for others, I said, well, it's time for me to do my own. And I create with an American co-founder company called Genesys. It's also called the ways of the internet. So we were collecting billions of data about the quality of the internet, and thanks to that data, we were able to do real-time routing, so actionable data. And the goal was to, when you listen to a video or looking at the video and it starts to buffer, that's the type of problems that we were solving. Or even 100 milliseconds lost for Amazon was 1% of sales lost. That was the main goal. And then we successfully sold it to Citrix, a little early to be honest. And that came also from this alignment between the goal of the investors and the goal of the entrepreneurs. And I said, well, I need to change that. So that's why I moved to the dark side of the business and moved to the investor side.
So what excites you right now?
So now I'm CEO of the Directeur Général of Crédit Mutuel Innovation. And as you said in your introduction, we invest 1 to 20 million in, I would not say early stage company, because they need to make at least 200K in revenue. And we have kind of our strategy. I think the job of investor is changing a lot and it's disrupted. And it's not because you are close to startup that you are hype or modern or using the latest technology. So I think the job is evolving a lot, and we need to define a direction for the fund. And we decided that we need to help big groups or big companies to accelerate their digital transformation. I would say we should not say digital transformation, we should say transformation at the end. But at least it creates, when you see so many startups, it creates a TAMI, like a selection of companies that fits already business needs for some big companies that we know. So that way you do a kind of lean evolution. So we ask those big groups, Carrefour, LVMH, and all those groups, say, what's your innovation goals, or what's your innovation needs for the 6 months to 5 years? And thanks to that, we know that there is business, and we select the right companies knowing that there is business, and we get the feedback to ensure that we improve and make the circle, and which makes 3 wins for the big groups, wins for us, and wins for, of course, the startup who making business today start to be complex. So how can we as a bank play our role and help them to make the right business?
Great. Well, you see a lot of investing and a lot of startups in the seed world. What's your advice for people investing in early stage companies? What do you tell them to do before they write that first check?
Take care of the people, because it's pretty obvious, but a good team with an okay idea can be successful, where a good idea with not the right people, you're sure that you're going to fail. So that's one thing. The advice would be also, before signing a check, is more the spirit of how to work. And I'm a new investor because I'm in this job for 18 months now. And what I feel sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes, like, the hand who is giving is always above the hand who is receiving. And this is sometimes painful because at the end, when I was an entrepreneur, I was sleeping, 4-5 hours a night, traveling all the time. And now that I'm an investor, honestly, my job is pretty cool. I'm sleeping well. I can stay at home late at night, if I stay at home with my family. And the people who are really working are still the entrepreneurs. So just stay humble.
And then on the other side of that, what do you tell startups to do before they go out to raise funding? What's your advice for them?
Well, I'm sometimes refuse to invest in some companies when they don't ask me that specific question. And that specific question is, can you introduce me to entrepreneurs where you failed as a VC? Because meeting entrepreneurs where everything is successful, of course, everybody's happy. But when they fail, that's where you see the real nature and the real reaction of the people. And that would be one of my advice. And second is expect from the investor more than money. And of course, we're all talking about smart money, but there is different type of, the strategy that we are setting up in France, I think is really answering the needs of startup, because making business at the end is what will make the company successful. But when I was talking with the CDO, Chief Digital Officer, and he was telling me that he gets about 70 meeting requests from startup per day. So his job is terrible because he says no to everyone. And at the end, maybe one startup can really answer his needs, but it's like too many, I say no. And that's an issue because they don't answer to email, they don't answer to LinkedIn, they don't answer to phone calls. So when you're a startup, it starts to be pretty challenging to make your business because you're not able to get in contact with the buyers. And that's where the role of the VC can be really helpful. So if they are not able to help you to create more business and more than just money, then I would look for someone else. And second or third advice would be more around the problem I had as an entrepreneur is that the company was growing, up and down, but still pretty successful. And at some point, when I was able finally, after signing Facebook, Twitter, Slack, Pinterest, Microsoft, Airbnb, etc., in Europe, about all the press luxury brands, but the big business for us was Asia. And cracking the Chinese market was a real challenge. And I went several times there. And when you start to say, okay, I get it now. I know how to do channel in China. I know how to do channel in Japan and in South Asia. And when you say, okay, now we can sign Alibaba, and we sign Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, Huawei. And when your VC says, well, I have LPs, I need to give the money back, so we need to sell the company. This alignment between the goals of the entrepreneur and the team and the goals of the VC makes that when if one day I create another company, I will more look for an evergreen VC than a standard short-term VC.
That's good advice. So let's talk about the state of venture investing. How do you see the industry evolving from here?
Well, from Europe, of course, I look very closely at what the US is doing. But what I see in this industry, I say three types of investors. There is I would say the kind of old school type of VCs who generate their deal flow thanks to network and people and keynote and meetups and etc. And that's, I think, start to be over because it's an unscalable business also for VCs. Then you have the ones who are in this starting to use data. So of course CRM, but that's usual. But even though I know some VCs still working with Excel, so not all of them, but some does, and so using more the data to facilitate the work. And then there is one that I looked at much is what I call the advanced data-driven type of VC. And I think that's where the data is giving you all the information to select based on your investment thesis, the companies you're looking for. And that way you can, at Crédit Mutuel, we see 1,500 companies per year. And at the end, my transformation rate is that I have to say no 99.5% of the time, which is hard. It's hard for us because it's hard to say no to an entrepreneur, and not because it's the project is not good. It's just that it's not the good timing. Maybe I don't have enough bandwidth because maybe it's not our target. But if we had the right tool to select directly the right startup meeting our request, even though before they even think about raising money, I think that's something where the company needs to go, which means that you will not have, if my kids ask me, I would like to be an investor, should I start to be an analyst? My answer would be no. I think analysts will be replaced by data scientists inside VC new generation type of profile of job.
Right. And so in the next 5 years, what's the biggest change you think we'll see in the VC industry?
Well, the data-driven. I think that the data-driven and the biggest change is that you will see more data scientists inside the VC part. And I think that also the market needs to change in a way that they need to be more evergreen, because you don't build a unicorn in 5 years. You need more time, whatever happened. So, of course, you always have exceptions, but long-term is key. And even though, I'm in a small country in Europe called France, and we have a really cool president saying we are a startup nation. But if you want to be a scale-up nation, then you need that the investor don't say, well, end of the game, you need to sell the company. And we all know that 85% of the company bought by big groups failed after 1 year just because of culture. So the mix of long-term and also ensure that when they do their exit, and there is so much work done by entrepreneurs to grow their own business that you need to be really focusing also on the exit, on the culture of both companies.
Great. So tell us more about your investment thesis, where you are now. What do you look for? What's your criteria?
So the criteria, so say, well, about 200K in revenue so far. And because when it's too big, and then I have my big guys who are able to put 50 million or 100 million plus. What I'm looking for is more all the companies who fits the target, which is what I call a butterfly strategy. So like a butterfly, there is two L's. The one is how do we work and how do we put ourselves in on the road of entrepreneurs, and on the second L is how do we maximize and help the entrepreneurs to be successful, which is, of course, playbooks. Playbooks is important because it's transversal in any type of companies. Like when I need to launch my company and I have to go abroad in other countries, which country should I start with? Or another question is, you have stock option. How should I distribute my stock options? I need to have maybe I should have a CTO at the board. Well, it's how do I get the best of it? And all that can be transversal. And there are also some hard playbook, like when I was founder of Genesys, we have one guy of the team who died. And how do you manage the family and all that? And this is what can happen in every entrepreneur's situation. And it's really hard. And it was a really painful situation. And at that stage, you need help. And if the VC can help you with some kind of information or help to manage those questions, that's cool. So the second is more around how can they help to do business. Third is all about hiring. And I think that's all, again, I would say even more in the US, when you are looking for a VP sales, you are looking for another VP sales in another company, where I think that thanks to data and thanks to the, again, data-driven way of looking at it, maybe the best VP of sales is not another VP of sales. It's maybe someone who was at product, who want to, and his ambition or her ambition is to become VP of sales. So he will overachieve expectation just because that's the goal, that's his mission, his ambition. And if the ambition of the company fits the ambition of the people, that's where you get the best of it. So how do we use the data to find the right people fitting their ambition? And last is how the VC will help in terms of communication. Today, in this noisy world, you need to help your startup to better communicate, better pitch, and build a media ecosystem to help your startup to evolve in the right place and the right way.
Great. So in talking about European startups, what do you think is the main challenge they face today to launch their business?
Well, I think it's a country challenge. Is when you launch a company in the US, from start, you have one language, 52 states, and you already have a big market. And my bad, I don't remember how many American people in the US, but it's what you remember how
350 million now.
Yeah, I had 400. Wow. Okay. Well, if you start your business in France, it's 50 million. So your market size is still much smaller. And even if Europe is doing a better and better job, we need to be the United States of Europe. And that way you can be successful. So that's I would say the biggest challenge in terms of market.
And on the other side of that, what's the biggest challenge you find European investors have today?
That's a good question. Ego, maybe. That's
a universal one there, I think, but okay.
Ego, and again, I would move back to data, how to use the data to select the right companies to invest in. And I think the fact that they are close to startup make them hype, where in reality, inside their own organization, they might to improve lots of stuff before being a little hype.
Okay. Well, in Europe, there are many sectors and different applications that one can invest in. But if you had to pick one or two that you think are really good opportunities today in Europe to pursue, what would you put at the top of the list?
I would say there are many. There are 2-3 areas. First, what we see is that, and you see it also in the US, you have. Well, I focus on SaaS and so software as a service and that type of industry. And if you take a CRM like Salesforce, it's a big company able to do everything. And now this big market start to be so big that small companies start to eat a piece of Salesforce. And you have that in many, many industries. And this niche based on software that will take a piece of market share for Salesforce or for others makes that big companies are using multiple solutions. And I would say that the challenge and the opportunity I see, and again, very humbly, because I'm in this industry for 18 months only, but I would, if you take one solution for each niche that you need to solve your problem with, then every one of them is generating data. And how do you synchronize all that data to extract the best of it? So I would say that some kind of cloud orchestration is important. So that would be one. And second, I think education is something that hasn't been changed for years. For 100 years, if you look at the class where you were a little boy, or even your parents or your grandparents were a little boy and girls, the look and feel was the same as today. And if we take some basic statistics, so in 10 to 20 years, 30% of the jobs that are done today will not exist anymore. So what do you do with those people? And how do you help them to be ready and to evolve? And I think this is a good challenge. And based on that, we have invested in a company, a very small company, but I am sure it's my pepite, is one of the pepite, of course, all of them are pepite, but they called Maria Schools, like Maria Montessori. And I think their vision to help and mix the goal for the company's goals and the people's goals is something I would look at. And of course, then cybersecurity is a nightmare for everyone. Antivirus is becoming I would say almost useless now. And so that means that the market is changing to EDR, and that's where I would look more around. But again, if I had the right, there is a French expression saying that the people who gives the advice are not the one paying the bills. So don't take it as I'm not, of course, 100%, but we are working on that direction for sure at Crédit Mutuel Innovation.
Great. Well, the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think we covered a lot already. Thank you for. So I would more insist on maybe the fact that people need to focus on evergreen. This is key for investors and this is key for entrepreneurs. And I would say that we are in this industry because we love innovation and we need to share the good face to the entrepreneurs. And I'm always sad to see after a board meeting that we don't give the right energy to the entrepreneurs. They are working hard. Of course, they do mistakes, but we do too. So whatever. So that's not needs to be solved. But I like the fact to always find the right sentence at the end of each board to ensure that they keep their motivation, because that's sometimes tough. And the last advice would be more to entrepreneurs before they launch their company. First, before launching your company, ask your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend to their agreement to do it. Because if you don't get the agreement before launching your company, you might move to what's called in French the 3D effect, which is in French getting depressed, getting divorced, and getting bankrupt. So it's a D. And this is happening to many of my friends. So when you are in this trouble, be sure that your family is supportive, because then it's a really great experience. And focusing on your team, at Cedexis, I've created a family of 75 people, and we sold the company the 12th of February 2018. And I have to say that every single day I have a message from one of those, and that's the best I could share with all the entrepreneurs who want to launch a company.
Well, so how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Well, LinkedIn, Twitter is the best. And sorry if I'm not answering fast enough, but I will do my best for sure.
We'll put those in the show notes. Want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you for receiving me, and enjoy, and welcome to America.
Thanks so much. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Alti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall in podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.